Patrick Fabian has played Howard Hamlin for 5 seasons on Better Call Saul. I'm Matt Noble at Gold Derby, and I want to start off by asking you, Patrick, what was the best thing about playing Howard?
Well, knee-jerk reaction answer, the suits. The suits were as fabulous to feel and wear as they were to look at. And that's a hats off to Jennifer Bryan, who was our wardrobe designer. And I'll just get all my suit jokes out of the way. No, I don't get to keep them. Yes, they got paid more than I did. And that's okay, because honestly, they probably did 90% of my work.
I love it. Did you, well, yeah, because I feel like Howard is a character that the show is from a slightly different time from now. It is set in the pre-Breaking Bad world. So it's a period piece in that we're going back to the early thousands, which not too many shows do. But I feel like also Howard's of a different time as well, even than some of the other characters on the show.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. And it is the accoutrements that Howard is sort of draped with that give it that period feel, you know, that tie bar, that knit tie. We got a lot of reaction from people who were like, I used to wear that. And at a point in time, that very much was a status symbol, especially we're gonna say in Albuquerque around that time. And the Jaguar that I drive, which I was very excited when I'm like, ooh, Howard drives a Jag, until I got in it. And if you haven't been in like a 2000 circa Jag, it's not as fancy as you think it is. It's really sort of rudimentary. Cars have come so far. So it was interesting to put myself in the idea of like, I'm still at the top of the heap. But being somebody who lives in 2022, it was really interesting to feel like, what does that mean back then? And it does mean cufflinks. It does mean suits. It does mean we have no phones. We're not on the internet, right? So it really is very much about the idea of what you drive and what you wear is who you are.
And it must be interesting because you were alive in the time you're playing, so you can sort of like kind of bounce like, oh boy, it would have been so cool to have all these things back then. I remember what that was like, and now things have come so far, like that. It now seems dated and old. Yeah.
Oh no, it's rather quaint. I mean, honest to God, if you got in that Jaguar and drive it, I'm like, oh, this is hard to drive. It looks great pulling up to valet, but it was hard to drive. But that might be because, you know, I'm driving a Toyota Highlander, which is not as sexy.
How would you describe Howard's evolution over the course of the series?
You know, the writers were really great, and they gave me a gift with the character of Howard. And, you know, as they had stated before, they didn't know where this whole thing was going to go with all the characters in some respects. They didn't know how the story was going to be told. They write for where the story leads them, which is a real hallmark of their genius. And in the beginning, you know, I'm identified as Lord Vader by Jimmy himself in that very opening scene. And I remember Vince Gilligan on our very first day of shooting, because I was I was nervous. I was excited for the job, but I was nervous, just like you are the first day of school. And, you know, I'm sort of leaning into the perceived meanness of Howard. And Vince Gilligan came over to me and leaned down and said, hey, you know, we're not sure which way Howard's cutting on this. So we hired you, and we think you're pretty decent. So think about that. And I really kept that in the forefront of my mind as I played Howard, that he was ultimately a decent man. He wasn't a liar. He wasn't a cheat. And the things that he was sort of forced to do, or chose to do, rather, let's not blame Chuck for everything, were things that he did that made him uncomfortable. He's not a bad guy, I don't think, ultimately, when it all is said and done. And over the course of 5 seasons, they've provided windows each season into him a little bit differently, a little bit more. You found out, oh, he's not Lord Vader. He actually was sort of being puppeteered by Chuck. Oh, what's that feel like? Oh, he confesses to Chuck's death. Oh, Jimmy hangs him out to dry on that awful, wonderful scene where Bob Odenkirk delivers, well, I guess that's your cross to bear, Howard. Boom. I mean, so Howard goes on through therapy, and the writers, again, geniuses. So Howard goes through therapy, not the kind of guy who would normally do that. But in the end of it, he puts namaste on his Jaguar. And that pretty much is Howard Hamlin in a nutshell. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Was it like hard for you reading some of the scenes where Jimmy is so sort of ruthless to Howard?
Well, you know, what was great with working with Bob Odenkirk and Ray Seahorn, by the way, hats off to Kim Wexler's portrayal, right? They, over the course of the season, I like to think that I was a bounce card for a lot of their venting. You know, a lot of the scenes where we would enter into a scene, I'd say a little something, and then Jimmy would have a monologue telling me who I was. I'd say a little something, and then Kim would hand me my ass. You know what I mean? And I got sort of used to that role, and I liked it. I thought Howard's inner life and Howard's idea of not fighting back or speaking back, he chose his words very carefully when he did get sort of emotional or invested in it, which I think makes season 5 all the more of a real punch, of a real reveal when he gets to go ahead and lay it all out of what he's been thinking the entire time.
Talking about real punches, you got to go into the ring with Jimmy McGill and Bob Odenkirk this season, Patrick. What was it like filming that scene where you get to go a few rounds?
You know, when we started off the show, we're in HHM's office and I'm sitting at the head of the table, and Jimmy comes in and delivers that great network speech, you shall atone. I don't think at that point I thought 5 seasons later I would be standing in a boxing ring. So I'm standing there with Bob, and they've completely tricked out. SetDeck has tricked out this warehouse into what you see on the show. It's gorgeous. It's lit beautifully. Bob Odenkirk and I are standing there in boxing gloves, and I look at him. I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Did you ever think that this was the sort of point?" And he goes, "That's show business." And I thought, you're right. That's show business, and how lucky we are to be standing there doing that, because again, the writers made this work. They made it seem plausible. Couple things about the boxing. We did most all of it ourselves, although we were trained by Louis Moncada, which is great, who plays one of the Salamanca twins. We had some great stunt doubles who did some work with us. But my biggest concern was having to convince Bob that, because Bob's an action star from nobody, his worldwide, So I had to convince Bob, hey, Bob, in the script, it says Howard wins. Howard wins. I don't think he liked that. I still don't think he likes that.
And we'll talk a bit about spoilers from the season too, because that final scene of the season is a huge one for you. How did you, when you were first reading that script for the first time, how are you processing it, and what was the biggest challenge for you in approaching that final scene?
Well, I mean, first of all, anybody who's watching this who has not seen episodes 607 of Better Call Saul, take a break, go have a coffee, come back later.
Yes.
I was told before the season what was going to go on. And that was just more of a practical measure. I got a wife and kids, and, you want to continue on with stuff. So basically I was told that I'd have an early vacation on season 6, which makes sense. Howard's character is, as we all know, not in Breaking Bad. And there's all that sort of, where does he go? He could have drifted off. He could have had many, many fates. The fate they gave him, I thought, was actually the best. It was the final season, and it kind of feels like the end of high school, right? You're like, oh, this moment in time is really over. And you make promises to get together in summer, and we'll see each other for the reunion, and that's all that. But the fact is, it sinks in that, oh, this moment in time is slipping through your fingers like it does for everybody, and the job is over. But, show people, we're all emotional, and it's like, oh. However, the exit they gave me was extraordinary. And it was extraordinary because it also allowed Howard a bit of redemption, I think. I think Howard speaks for maybe some of the fan base that gets to voice some questions to Jimmy and Kim about, like, what are you doing and why are you doing it? And also identifying exactly who they are through Howard's eyes, which may be a way that some of the fans are starting to look at them as well. Mostly it was a sadness in that, I love Bob and I love Ray and I love everybody who I work with, and they've been my pals. We've become family as that sort of happens. And with all the things that have happened with Bob on set and with us getting close, and it was hard to leave. However, in the end, if you're going to do your final scenes, you want to do it with your best friends and the people you've been working with the entire time. So it was a real gift all the way around. Tom Schnauz wrote a hell of a script and directed it really well. And between everybody, we all showed up, and I think we delivered a real gem.
What as you performing in that final scene, as sort of cut is sort of said on Howard and your time on the show, what was the biggest change in your head from when you started the series?
Well, I think Howard finally found his voice at the end. The first H in HHM is his dad, who we never even saw. And we get an inkling when he talks to Kim and says, like, boy, I wouldn't have put my own shingle out in season 3, but he never did. And we saw how he behaved with Chuck, sort of being under his thumb a bit. And he's taken the burden of Chuck's death on him as well. It's a lot. It's a lot for anybody, but it makes me feel that Howard was always a bit tight. The reason he walks the way he walks is because he is a bit tight. He thinks it's presenting something, but it also presents something he doesn't really realize what it presents, I think. And by the end, that final scene, he really lets it all out. We get to see that he has, marriage troubles at home, just like you and me. Turns out Howard's actually a human being, just like you and me. And he's been wronged, and he's going to go confront the people who wronged him. And I think anybody can get their hands around that. And then the abruptness of the ending of that scene is just, I think, again, the writers really pulling the rug out on people, because I don't think we see it coming. And when Lalo enters, there's that sense of like, oh, what's going on? This isn't the mix. What's happening? And boom. I mean, literally like 20 seconds later, fade to black. We'll see you in 6 weeks. So it was quite a thing. But I think they gave me a great gift in allowing Howard to be 3D finally throughout the entire series.
Yeah, I think like from speaking with people in past seasons from Better Call Saul, it seems like something like that not many people on the show, if any, take for granted the experience and opportunities you guys have had to put together this show. But you did mention with, like the impact maybe of some of what happened with Bob and some of those concerns in the scenes. Does that give you even a greater sense of appreciation as you approach the final scenes and those moments?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Bob has talked about it. I mean, everybody knew, Bob had a heart attack while we were working. And and there's many, guess what? You don't have to be on TV to have a heart attack, as we all know. And many people have witnessed that. Pardon me. That was my first time seeing something like that. And for all the fun it is being on TV, and for all the fun it is dressing up and pretending for a living, and as important as we want to make television, we do want to make it important. Life is very precious, and there's no guarantee you're waking up today. And that was brought full force home. So, when that event happened, there was the sense of like, oh, that's over. I mean, it's over. That's it. The season's done and everything else. And then the flip side comes back in 6 weeks. After that moment of like, oh, I guess that's the end of everything. We're back at work. We're back at work on the same set, doing the same scene where he had just had a heart attack. And you go like, how do you wrap your brain around that? And part of the way you wrap your brain around that, like anybody does, they get back into the thing that they do. And the thing that we do is make this show. So, we took over our assignments and did our thing. Did it infuse the rest of the season with any more sense of like, wow, are we fortunate and lucky? I mean, if you could infuse it any more than I already thought I was, yeah, it did. And, I'll speak for myself as this actor. I get crazy about like what's coming up, and oh my gosh, don't you know who I think I am? And am I ever going to be this? Am I ever going to be that? Oh, the next, the higher, the this, the next, the higher. It's exhausting. I think people in America are pretty much like that in general, but actors is sort of, it's part of your toolkit. And that really helps sort of put things in perspective, frankly. So it is a bit of like hug your kids when you say goodbye, walk the dogs and enjoy it. Now I sound like namaste guy, but it's, it's true. It's true. And I'll say this because Bob would want me to say it as well. If you haven't been checked your heart, go to your cardiologist and get your heart checked out. Know what's going on. And also learn CPR. Learn CPR. Bob Odenkirk would not be alive if the people around him did not know CPR. So that's a great thing you can do for somebody else in case the situation ever comes up, whether or not you're on TV or not. One really cool thing was you, Bob, and Ray got to live together for most of the time making the show, which is really really fun. Firstly, was it like hard having to move out of the house? Wow. I would love to tell you it was like Animal House and it was crazy. But the fact is, we're all adults with partners and kids to take care of and stuff like that. But what it was a home. And Bob was so smart, and I can't thank him enough for inviting us to come in and join him, because it was great to go home from work and not go to an empty place. And I mean, basically, we acted like a college fraternity or a sorority. Like we'd go to work together, we'd work, we'd talk to each other in between scenes, and then we'd go home. And like any good sorority, we'd sit around the kitchen table eating French fries and having drinks at late night, discussing what was going on in the show. And then working on what our work was for the next day. In the interim, if we had days off, we love to go hiking. Albuquerque, New Mexico in general was a great place to go hiking. I know they think it's crowded, but living in Los Angeles, I can assure them there's nobody there in the state. So you go hiking, you wouldn't see anybody. We go up Sandia and, we became really good friends like that. And so consequently, when, the incident did happen with Bob, it was like family. There's no doubt about it. And I tell you what, again, I don't think I'll ever have that situation again. If I ever get fortunate enough to be, number one on the call sheet, maybe I'll invite some cast members, because that precedent, I saw what it did for our spirits. Just to have somebody there, just to know somebody else was in the house was great. I'll venture to say it was kind of like having dogs around, which is not to say I'm saying that I'm not calling Ray Steve Horn a dog or Bob Odenkirk a dog, but if the fans want to go ahead and get online and say, if they were dogs, what kind of dogs would they be? Feel free.
Oh, that's fun. That's very fun. And I spoke with Ray last week, and she said that you kept a secret from them, that you were dying at the end of the season.
I know. Well, you know what? When I got that call in the beginning of the season, Vince, Melissa Bernstein, and Peter Gould told me what was going on, and then they said, "Great, now forget it." And I was like, "Right." And I've been used to doing that for the entire run of Better Call Saul. My wife doesn't know what goes on when I come back from work. I just don't talk about it. We don't talk about Bruno. We don't talk about Saul. I talk about it with my cast members, but with Bob and Ray, I also didn't want to let them know, because for me, I loved getting the scripts week to week to week. That's how I loved unfolding it. That's what I knew. I would get a script. I'm like, oh, this is what Howard's doing now. Oh, this is what he's doing now. I assumed that they worked in the same fashion, and I didn't want to spoil it or spoil whatever scene was happening before them with this foreknowledge of what was coming up. However, when they did find out about it, they called, I guess, Vince and Peter, and they're like, does Patrick know? And they're like, oh, yeah. We told him like 6 months ago. And Ray was like, are you kidding me? So guess what? If you need a secret kept, I guess this is the guy.
Yeah, she just said, like, you guys love nerding out about the characters and the work on the show when you guys are hanging out. But she said you didn't talk a whole bunch about subtext. Like, that was something that was a bit more internal. What do you think was sort of the most important subtext to Howard?
Oh, I believe that Howard thought he was always doing the right thing. A bit of my subtext, and this is going back to that comment that Vince said about decent. I always think of my father as being the most decent man I know. My father's not a liar. My father is a man of his word. And I thought of my dad running this firm with all of the pressures and the things and trying to navigate doing the right thing in a world of business where maybe the right thing isn't profitable, or the right thing isn't necessarily necessary in order to be successful. So that was sort of my guiding thing on it. That, and also my subtext, and this is just shallow, but I think it plays into Howard. Every time I walked into a scene, one of my first thoughts, one of my secrets that I had as an actor was that I'm wearing more money than you make in a year, was sort of the idea. That was sort of his plumage and his peacockness. So I always liked that. Especially with Jimmy, I would quietly, I would do that thing where you're just like, I would check out his suit quietly and judge it, which was pretty easy, by the way.
And also, I think even some of this was done while you were living with them. Bob wrote a book.
Oh, how about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he put did he say that I ghost wrote it? Because I wrote like half that book.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Well, I think you watched some of his failed projects, didn't you, to help research for the book. But one of the things he says about you in the book, Patrick, that you see the ups and downs of acting life, and has risen from the fire, better, stronger, faster, but above all, kinder. What role do you think, how is kindness an important attribute for an actor?
Oh, well, again, this is only me speaking. Well, I mean, basically, because it is not a trajectory of you go up the step and up the step and up the step and up the step, and all of a sudden, oh, you're here. We're so excited. My experience is that it's a little bit up, it's a little bit down. It's a little bit up, it's a little bit down. And I got this advice a long time ago about being kind. It was phrased as, hey, don't be an asshole. It's hard enough. And that's kind of what I keep in my forefront as well. Also, it's fun. it's fun when you work. And it's exciting to be there, whatever it is. I still get excited when I drive onto the lot at Sony. I still get excited when I get to do an audition. When wardrobe calls, in my experience, when wardrobe calls, that's when you get the job, and that's when you get excited. It's thrilling, and it's not a right to get this job. It's a privilege, and it should be treated as such. And I've been shown that and taught that from the people ahead of me. And so I try to be kind as best I can. Because it's so easy to slip into the other way of behaving. But I think ultimately that corrodes you and corrodes those around you. And, life is short. So,
Yeah.
That? Sorry, somebody. Can you still see me?
I can't see you, but I can hear you, Patrick.
Okay, great. Somebody is trying to call in, but I don't want to disconnect us. So it's going to go away in a second. Oh, you know what? It's political season here, and it's political season 100% of the time in America anymore, and so people are just coming away.
Cool. I've got we are pretty much done now, Patrick. I just said Ray just wanted me to ask you 2 quick questions. You're back.
There we go. Yes.
Ray wanted me to ask you 2 quick questions. She was wondering how you plotted out falling apart, just because she said she got to ask you about it, but she didn't want to get in your head about it, and then she didn't get a chance to talk to you about it afterwards. Did you have graphs? Because it wasn't all filmed chronologically.
No, first of all, let's talk about Ray Seahorn for a second, who is my favorite actress. And
her other question, Patrick, was how much you adore her. It was one of the other things she wanted me to ask you.
Well, it's true. I love her to pieces. She is my sister from another mother, without a doubt. And it's been an honor and a pleasure and a learning experience to watch her work and be across the table from her. I mean, you think she's good on screen, man, you should have a front row seat like I did. Mm-hmm. In terms of plotting and graphic, it's funny. Of course, you would ask that question. And the reason is because Ray Seahorn is a very, she really does her homework about what's going on and explores different possibilities and whatnot. And what makes her so compelling is that she has all of those sort of thoughts and research accessible when she hits the screen. And yet she throws it all away, and then she's just open to what's happening. And then things come up. It's great. It's so wonderful to watch. Whatever you throw at her, she hasn't pre-decided anything. And I've learned from that. In terms of the plotting out and stuff like that, I think there were sections, especially in that last scene and that whole last episode, where all of a sudden I was like, where does it go? I didn't really graph it out, but it was a sense of disintegration. It is the disintegration of Howard. And so I thought Howard starts off whole, and then as he goes, pieces and control leave him, until finally that scene with Ed Begley Jr., where the jig is up. You have lost. It's over. He's been exposed. He's been stripped naked in his own office, basically. So that's the one chunk. And then the second chunk is the rebuilding of Howard. That last scene is Howard coming in saying, I've had time to ponder this. Now I have a game plan. And, if Howard continues, what you're going to see is Howard continuing to slowly, it's the long game. It is the sting. It's the long con. He doesn't need to get Kim and Jimmy immediately, and he won't. He will plot it out methodically, marshaling all of the things that he has acquired over his lifetime to get back at them, which makes it even more tragic when it's interrupted like that.
Yeah.
But I think Ray, I'm sorry, that's a long-winded. I think Ray was asking whether she thought I was a better actor than her, and the answer is no, I'm not.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. No, but it's very good. And look, we brought it back to you being Robert Redford, even though we started talking about that. Even though we started talking about that before the interview started recording. Patrick, thank you so much for spending time with us today. All the best of luck with the upcoming Emmy Awards for Better Call Saul.
Thank you so much. Anybody out there, please consider everybody at Better Call Saul and the show itself. Thanks for your support.
And you're lucky you don't have to be in the same category as Ray.
Thank God. Yeah.
But you probably would have gotten in over it because you. Patrick, if people watch this interview, you can go to goldderby.com to make your own award predictions. Patrick, thank you so much for chatting today. It was so much fun.
Thank you, man.